The only person at fault here isn't with us anymore. It's 100% on Jordan. 100%. I don't even take a 0.5%. I mean, he made that happen. Everything about that was on him.
Michael Dunn, accused of killing 17-year-old African-American teenager Jordan Davis, awaits trial as he continues to argue his case with anyone who will listen. He can be heard deflecting the blame for what had occurred that fateful evening onto the victim to justify his actions. Dunn never once has taken the blame, even after being handed down a sentence of life without parole plus 90 years. He's been ruled guilty for killing Davis and 3 counts of attempted murder on behalf of the friends of the victim. On Black Friday, November 26, 2013, Michael Dunn and his girlfriend Rhonda Rua were visiting from out of town to be at his son's wedding. On the evening in question, Dunn and Rua made a quick detour before arriving back at their hotel to a gate food post for a bottle of wine. Around the same time, 17-year-old African-American teenager Jordan Davis and 3 friends had just come from the mall after shopping and pulled up next to them whilst listening to blaring music. While Rua ran inside to purchase the bottle of wine, Dunn decided to stay back and wait for her. During his wait, he ended up confronting Davis and his friends, insisting they turn down the volume. When the teens responded that they wouldn't be turning down their music, an argument ensued. The argument quickly halted as Dunn reached over into his glove compartment, brandished a licensed pistol, and fired 8 to 9 shots into their car. These shots led to the death of Jordan Davis. Instead of leaving immediately, Dunn continued waiting for his girlfriend. Once she returned to the vehicle, he then sped away from the scene, neglecting to stay back until the police arrived, as well as reporting it to authorities. The harrowing trial occurred in February of 2014, leading to the defendant being found guilty of 3 attempted murders. However, the jurors were at a standstill and elected to request excess time to deliberate whether Dunn was culpable of a first-degree murder charge. Retried in September of that year, he was ruled guilty of the first-degree murder too. Sticking to his position of not having been guilty of the crimes, Dunn has continued to appeal the charges and ask for a retrial. In November of 2016, the District 1 Court of Appeals finally denied his appeals, citing the accuracy of the findings and solidifying his guilty verdict. During this time, Dunn sits quietly, with his hands clasped between his thighs. He partly disengages from the interrogator by continuing to look down, seemingly deep in thought. In a lackadaisical manner, he answers the questions without any hesitation in a way that suggests an active attempt to dissociate from the crime he's just committed. They go into a brief discussion about football teams as Dunn touches on the fact that he previously resided in Florida but moved to California. When he mentions football teams, the interrogator branches off this statement by stating that he nor his colleagues are fans of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Dunn then makes a comment about the Dolphins and smiles, waving his arm towards the officer, who then chuckles and jokes that he could live with that.
Well, I'm embarrassed to say this, but got out. She's in the store, and there's like a SUV next to us, and then the music starts. And I roll down my window, and I thought I was polite. I asked them nicely, I didn't demand, I didn't, or else I said, hey, would you guys mind turning that down? And they shut it off. I was like, thank you. Cordial. Everything's cordial. I put my window back up. I'm doing my stuff, and I don't know how many kids are in that, but the windows are down for the back seat. The windows are up for the front seat.
Okay.
And the guy that was in the back is getting really agitated. And my window's up. I can't hear everything he's saying, but, you know, there's a lot of and that. And then the music comes back on. And, you know, I'm just like, live and let live, and you know, don't need any trouble. And I don't know if they're singing or what, but it's like they're saying, kill him. So I put my window down again, and I said, excuse me, are you talking about me? And it was like, kill that. And, I'm still not reacting, but then this guy, like, goes down on the ground and comes up with something. I thought it was a shotgun. And he goes, "You're dead," and he opens his door. Mm-hmm. And I'm shitting bricks. But that's when I reached in my glove box, unholstered my pistol. I mean, I practice this. I'm at the Fort Malabar rifle and pistol range. I'm an avid, gun guy and all that. No military training or anything, but I have friends who are in the military that show me the
proper way.
Yes, and so quicker than a flash, I had a round chambered in it, and I shot.
Okay. Do you remember how many times you shot?
4.
Okay. Okay, just keep walking me through kind of what you remember.
I shot 4 times, and that SUV pulled out, and like I said, in my mind, they got a gun. And so, not training, just from, I was still scared. Mm-hmm. And so I shot 4 more times as they were fleeing.
As they were fleeing?
Yeah, trying to keep their heads down to not catch any return fire.
Okay. All right. And then
and that was it. I mean, I still didn't feel safe. I thought, there was another car. I didn't know. I mean, I'm in a strange town, in a strange area. Mm-hmm. I just had my life threatened. The love of my life is in the store. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't know what's going on. She come outside to see what was up. And I was just like, get in the car. We have to go. I just didn't feel safe there. In fact, we had plans, in fact, a fairly expensive bed and breakfast paid for in St. Augustine. And, after what happened last night, and we were like, we have to go home and call the local sheriff and tell him what's up.
Well, where'd you go after
we went right to our room.
You went right to the hotel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't leave. We were just like
in the hotel room?
bricks waiting for another carload of thugs to come. I mean,
as Dunn's recollection of the evening unfolds, he makes little to no eye contact with the officer. He becomes increasingly fidgety as he goes on about the incident, momentarily rubbing his temples, rubbing his hands on his knees, rubbing them together, etc. Notice without the interrogator asking, he keeps explaining that his actions were due to fear of the teenagers, and the one he allegedly stated had a weapon and was threatening him. He subtly attempts to steer the attention away from his actions and plays off of the fear he had felt that he kept referring back to. Not only could this be an attempt to convince the officer, but it could also mean that the suspect is falsifying parts of his recollection and is looking to even convince himself that this was his main motive for shooting. The officer continues to write his notes down, remaining calm and in a relaxed sitting position. This nonverbal cue is a form of communication that subconsciously calms the suspect down, for them to remain open and to keep talking. However, Dunn makes a mistake in his argument by saying that him and his girlfriend were waiting for another carload of thugs to come whilst in their hotel room. His usage of the term thug may not seem striking to some, but it can be a potential indicator of preconceived prejudices, solely based on characteristics such as age, race, and gender, etc. He said, "I hate that thug music." This shines a light on the fact that Dunn holds a preconceived prejudice towards those who listen to rap music, inadvertently indicating it most likely wasn't so much the volume of the music, but what kind it had been and who was listening to it.
How many do you normally keep it fully loaded? Okay, you keep it fully loaded but not chambered. You had to chamber it?
I don't. My military friends think I'm an idiot, but I just don't.
Okay, no, that's what I'm saying. You normally don't keep it chambered. You knew you had to rack one to put one in the chamber.
Yes, it's a practice.
Right.
In this segment, the interrogator begins to subtly probe as to how the gun had been kept, leading up to the murder. He asks whether Dunn kept the gun fully loaded, and if he was aware that he had to rack in order to put one in the chamber. They both agree that this action must be practiced in order to do it quickly in an emergency defense scenario. By probing in this manner, the office is beginning to establish intent. This small piece of information alludes to his level of culpability in the murder. On average, loading and reloading a chamber after successfully racking the slide takes anywhere from 4 to 5 seconds. Given Dunn's assertion that he's practiced it, this would most likely be the time frame. When considering the time frame of 4 to 5 seconds, it is a safe assumption to insinuate that if he had ever been in imminent danger, he would have suffered from a counter-responsive gunfire, etc., from the victim and/or his friends. However, this did not occur. Without Dunn realizing it, his admission that he's practiced this and that it is a learned task says that he has vast experience and ability to properly handle a firearm. The medical examiner's findings indicate a direct shot through the aorta. The conclusion can be drawn that his aim was purposeful, and his ability was tactful enough to hit the target. The ordering of pizza and arrival back to the hotel room sheds light on the callousness of Dunn towards his crime. His only excuse is that he wanted to report it back home, to those who he knew and were familiar to him. Whether his mentioning of the military and this statement reflects a potential for any amicable ties with the police force, and the potential he knew he had regarding having the law side with him, we do not know. While Dunn never admitted to fault, he did acknowledge that he shouldn't have left the scene. The interrogator goes on to say that the weapon Dunn had allegedly seen was nowhere to be found, inside the vehicle or at the crime scene.
Here's what has to happen. I know that from your position right now that you want to do everything to protect yourself. And I can't say that I blame you for that. But we're going to need the total truth as to what happened. Not this story that I've had from 7:30 last night till 12 o'clock today to fix up. Okay, because the only thing that's going to make sense to us is the truth matching the scene. And there was the biggest problem we got, the first hurdle we got to get over is that there is no weapon in that truck.
Did he have a stick? Because he stuck something up.
I'll double check it. I don't recall seeing anything like that, really. But I'll double check it. I'll look again. But, obviously our main thing is when we're going through, we're looking for any kind of weapons, any kind of evidence of a weapon, shell casing,
well,
bullets.
The second problem we have is that the last set of rounds when the truck is backing away from you, and you put 4 more sets in it, 4 more shots into it. That's an issue. Because now if it's backing away, it's no longer a threat.
Yes, sir, I understand that. In my mind, they had a weapon.
Okay. I can't shoot someone because in my mind they had a weapon. Okay. That's the problem. I mean, if I walk up to someone right now and I'm having a conversation with them and I think they have a weapon, the law doesn't allow me to shoot him because I think he has a weapon. I think you would have a hard time arguing with your statute versus any one of them that they could get out and beat you up.
Well, there's 4 of them.
Even the 4 of them. I think you would have a hard time arguing that the 4 of them could have done anything to you.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. How were you, when you pulled your gun out, say you're sitting in your driver's seat like that straight ahead, how did you shoot? Did you shoot one-handed? Did you shoot two-handed?
Two-handed like that.
Two-handed like this, you come across your body? Okay, and you shoot the first, you said 4 shots is what you remember. And then they start backing out. Do you continue to shoot through the window, or do you reposition yourself?
I don't recall, but I do remember getting out of my car and taking, getting sideways. Mm-hmm. And I was, waiting for the wink, or...
But once again...
all this is...
Okay. Once again, if you think they have something, think they have a shotgun.
They have a shotgun.
You think they have a shotgun. Are you going to get out of your car so they can get a good aim on you? Make any sense?
Well, at the time, I was doing everything on adrenaline and no...
But I'm just saying, we're trained to, if we think something is there, to get out of the way.
To get out of the way.
Cover or concealment. So you're telling me that you thought they had a shotgun, but you got out of your car. so they would get a good aim at you, is what you're telling me.
Here, the interrogator starts interjecting more. He lets Dunn know that the story he is feeding the police isn't the whole truth, and in order to resolve everything more quickly, that he will need to start telling the total truth. Dunn's futile attempts and clinging onto his stick theory are disregarded by the police officer, since there was no clear physical evidence of a weapon present. He then goes on to say that just because he thought they had a weapon, it doesn't justify the defense, especially after having gotten out of his car to shoot at the perceived threat when they were clearly pulling away from the confrontation. Dunn still insists the victim had gotten out of his car despite clear factual evidence that that wasn't what had actually occurred. The interrogators continue to negate this by saying his version of events doesn't make sense and that the victim had no criminal record. At this point, the only thread he has to cling on to is the idea that they had wanted to kill him. He continues to assert that the comment was directed at him, when originally he had stated that he thought it could have been lyrics to the music that was playing. They also argue against this, saying it didn't make any sense, due to the fact that they were allegedly playing the music at an excessive volume. The interrogators let Dunn know that it was a rarity for the bullets to have missed some or all of the other boys. A huge red flag is his response to this information. "I feel bad for the boys in the truck." This comment struck me as odd, because the verbiage used insinuated his feeling bad for the boys in the truck, but not for the one he alleged to have seen get out of the vehicle. As soon as the interrogators exit the room, his attempt at a nonchalant facade slips, revealing his anxiety. He wipes perspiration off his brow, proceeds to curl up, and puts his head in his hands.
Do I need to get a lawyer? I mean, it sounds like I'm in deep.
Well, that is up to you. Okay, that is a decision for you. I cannot advise you on what you should and should not do.
I didn't even ask it.
I know the guys have already talked to you. I'm assuming that they said they mentioned to you, but you know that you were arrested, correct? Did they tell you that? You're under arrest? Okay.
This likely signifies how comfortable he had been in the beginning with feeling as though he wasn't at fault. Now he's realizing the insurmountable evidence against him. In Florida, the Stand Your Ground law had been passed down in 2005, amending the criteria for a self-defense claim in that if an individual feels serious injury will be caused to them or their person, they are justified in utilizing deadly force without the need for the attempt to evade the assailant. In the case of Florida versus George Zimmerman, 2013, Zimmerman alleged whilst on a neighborhood watch run regarding a report of suspicious behavior. Zimmerman had gotten out of his car despite dissuasion from the police to do so and shot Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old African-American teenager, due to the teenager supposedly becoming physically aggressive towards him. This case strikes similarities in that both Dunn and Zimmerman voiced prejudices outward, with Dunn describing the teenagers in his case as thugs, and Zimmerman asserting that these types of punks always get away. Unfortunately, in this case, Zimmerman was found not guilty of a second-degree murder charge, despite proof of otherwise. Jury nullification occurs when the jury comes to a not guilty verdict, despite the evidence showing otherwise. Weinstein, 1993. The amount of evidence in this case was overwhelming. Martin's girlfriend heard the commotion and directed him to run away, and in response, he walked away quickly. CBS News 2012. For the jury to hear the girlfriend's statement and the telephone call where Zimmerman was instructed not to follow Martin, as well as the 46 phone calls to the police made by Zimmerman regarding African-American men, and still coming out with a not guilty verdict is jury nullification. Whether it was self-defense or not, a crime was committed, and the jury did not react impartially to that. Many cases such as this shed light on just how deep the roots of systematic racism penetrate our country. While Zimmerman had not been found guilty in the Trayvon Martin case, but Michael Dunn was in Jordan Davis's, a potential for a racially motivated crime was not considered. The jury felt that there was no evidence directly signifying this motive, despite verbiage and mannerisms used by Dunn that told otherwise. One of the jurors who made a decision on Dunn's case reflected that race had never been a question, only justice. She stated that she was in the middle of whether the murder should be classified as first or second-degree murder, despite evidence clearly displaying an intent. While the jury in the case was more representative of society as a whole, it's important to consider racially motivated hate crimes when the defendant accountable for the crime made clear and audible comments about their inferences of the victim and how that plays into their perception, profile, and level of danger by them. Two important terms to consider while reviewing this case are the subtle, discriminatory theories known as symbolic and modern racism. These both support the idea that should a minority or underserved population act in a way of which misaligns with the rigidly conservative values of another, that their failures to recognize and abide by them is cause for action, and supporting the above-mentioned thought process of the individual. Gone awry, it can become deadly.